Greetings all. Welcome to Aquarian Diary. I'm your host, John Irving. It is August 12th, 2024. Today's episode is titled, Can Other People's Energies Affect Us? It's a pretty straightforward question, and you would think that the answer is also straightforward. But apparently not, because I have heard diverging opinions about this, and I would like to clarify this, at least from my perspective, and you can contemplate it however you see fit, and arrive at different conclusions if you like. That's perfectly fine. But I do think it is important to question some of our fundamental assumptions about the nature of reality and how they might affect us, because these kinds of things most certainly do. I may have just slipped in a spoiler there. Why am I even posing this question in the first place? Well, it's because I have heard various people on YouTube and elsewhere make statements like other people can't affect you, or other people's energies can't affect you. And from my perspective, that is patently false and blatantly contradicts decades of my own personal experience and that of many others who I have spoken with about this topic. There's something about me that when I hear BS, I feel like I have to say something about it. I have had countless, and I mean countless, experiences, because it happens all the time, where my energies are affected by other people, certain places, certain environments, certain situations, and so on. In fact, I practice energetic hygiene every day, every day. It has been months, and I mean literally months. I can't remember the last time I missed my spiritual practice, and my spiritual practice always includes clearing my energy because I don't want to be imprinted with things from my environment or people because it alters my perception and my experience. And almost every day, I feel a very significant and positively discernible shift in my energy after I do my spiritual practice. And I have, over the years, spoken to also countless people who have had all kinds of crazy experiences where they were affected energetically by things or people. And this goes back decades and decades. It is important to note that geography has no bearing on these kinds of experiences whatsoever. It is virtually part of my daily life to feel energies from other people who are even thousands of miles away. And I have confirmed these impressions so many times I can't even count. That is a fact. So especially if it's somebody we are strongly or deeply connected to, that bond, that cord, can be very, very powerful and very, very sensitive if you are aware of these kinds of energies. The deeper the bond, or the deeper the soul connection, the more powerfully this will be experienced. We've all had experiences where certain people make us feel uncomfortable or ill at ease, or maybe we've had run-ins with psychic vampires. I have, or just negatively oriented people or places or situations, or even dangerous situations where something in our gut screams, get the hell out of here, and if you're smart, you'll pay attention to your intuition and you'll follow that, right? So clearly there are certain places and situations and people that we would prefer to avoid. That seems quite self-evident. Likewise, there are certain people and places that make us feel good, that are empowering and rejuvenating and reinforcing or uplifting. So we are swimming in this sea of consciousness of our environment, and it can affect us in all kinds of ways, good and bad. In astrology, you can even determine certain places on the planet that would be more beneficial to you than others. This is called astrocartography, and it's a very powerful tool. I have lived in different places and had very different kinds of experiences depending on where I live, so clearly there's an energetic effect pertaining to those locations that, at least from my perspective, is indisputable. Some places just feel like home, and others feel like I just can't wait to get out of here. I don't fit in, I don't belong. And it's like that with people too, or even buildings or areas. I've had so many experiences along those lines that it would take me hours and hours, and it probably wouldn't even be possible to articulate all of them. There's just too many. I have felt shifts of energy from one territory of indigenous tribal land to the next when I cross the border. I can feel the energy of a city from about an hour and a half, 2 hours away. If I'm driving, my energy starts to shift as I get closer or further away from a city. That happened to me countless times, and I've also had innumerable experiences with others who are also empathic or sensitive to energies, where we had shared independent observations about certain situations. In other words, it wasn't just me or my imagination. There was somebody else there feeling or experiencing something extremely similar. So in my mind, this question is clear-cut. But there's another level of this question. Can someone deliberately alter your energy? Now, we have to define what deliberate means, because sometimes people direct energies at us unconsciously, and other times they know what they're doing. And then taken to the extreme, it could be somebody who is like literally wishing to, for example, harm you, and they direct a lot of negative energy at you intentionally. And is that possible? Well, let me give you this example. I was in a situation for quite a period of time where there was somebody who was angry at me about something, and this person kind of had issues around anger management, as it turned out. But from my perspective, I wasn't doing anything wrong, so I was just proceeding with what I was doing. So there was a serious difference of opinion. But there were occasions where this person was directing so much negative energy at me that it literally made me physically ill. There were numerous occasions where I had to take the day off work and sleep without pay because it was affecting me so much. Now you could say, well, maybe you're just really sensitive to energy. Well, I can tell you that I've met dozens and dozens of people that are really sensitive to energies. The first person I met like that was in the mid-1980s, and they told me stories that were just unbelievable. This person was very psychic when they were young, and they didn't know it. They later learned how to manage and protect their energy, as did I, over time. But it still takes diligence and effort to manage this. But my point stands that yes, other people's energies can affect us and alter our experience. Like, for example, those days that I had to take off work. If I hadn't taken those days off work, it might have altered the entire trajectory of my future from that point in time forward. It's like the butterfly effect. Butterfly in the Amazon flaps its wings and eventually it changes the weather in Europe or something like that, just through the domino effect. It's that concept. So in that example I was giving, where the person was angry at me, I don't know to what degree they deliberately wanted to cause me harm. But I have had numerous other experiences with people who actually did want to cause me harm because they're jealous or they're pissed off or they're possessive or vengeful or just plain mean-spirited or whatever it is. And so they're wishing harm upon you. Now, I don't want people to be paranoid, but that is why energy management, energy hygiene, clearing my energy, resetting my energy, doing protection is literally a part of my daily experience. And I would also argue that as the consciousness here on Earth continues to rise, we are going to become increasingly sensitive to energetic influences. I did an episode quite some time ago talking about how astrological influences are increasing in intensity. I published that here in November of 2022. I'll put a link in the episode description. And that has held true in my experience. I find now that the effects of even minor transits are much more pronounced than they were a few years ago even. So my expectation is that we will become more and more affected by the energies around us, by other people, by what's happening in the world, and so on, and that humanity is going to need to learn to work with and manage that so that we don't all go crazy. In fact, a lot of what we're experiencing right now, socially and politically, may very well be related to what I was just describing. So from my perspective, this is extremely clear-cut. People come into our lives, they engage with us, they interact with us, and they change the course of our destiny. Think about the implications of that. You could be walking down the street, turn a corner, meet somebody. That engagement, that interaction could change your whole future life, depending on who that person is and what happens. And I think these kinds of events are precipitated on a spiritual or energetic level, and then they filter down to three-dimensional reality. And let's be clear, karma is one of those influences or forces. We need to balance out karma in order to ascend. Ultimately, the spiritual seeker wants to be a master of themselves. They want to attain self-mastery so that they are not victimized or controlled by external energies or forces. They want to be the master of their own destiny. And part of that process is learning how to work with things on these subtle, esoteric, or spiritual levels. Again, as I often say, regular spiritual practice is virtually essential, whatever that looks like for you. Otherwise, you are subject to all of these forces and influences that affect you, whether you realize it or not, and which alter your experience and your destiny on a daily basis. So we need to come back to our center and learn what our center is and recognize when we are being influenced by forces outside of ourselves versus inside of ourselves, and react accordingly. Most people, frankly, are just going to incarnate, have their experience without even thinking about these kinds of things, come back, rinse and repeat, and they will do that lifetime after lifetime after lifetime until eventually they get so tired of not being in control of their destiny that they will learn self-mastery. Now, typically that takes many, many, many incarnations. What we're talking about here is an old soul, somebody who has had countless lifetimes of pain and suffering and illusion and delusion and fate and destiny, and then eventually we become more enlightened and we start to take the reins of our existence and take responsibility for our existence and for what we experience, and we can shape our destiny and our incarnations more consciously. But that requires discipline, focus, concentration, and dedication. So, in summary, based on a logical analysis of objective experiences, it is self-evident that we are affected by other people's energies and actions, and that some of these events or influences can alter our experience, if not even our destiny or life path, and that it is rather trivial to do so. Can someone do this deliberately? Theoretically, if someone was motivated to affect us or change the course of our destiny, they could do so quite easily, and that it would also be rather trivial to do that. Does this actually happen? I can quite confidently say, based on my own personal experience and my observations and the observations of others, that this almost certainly happens, and probably more than we realize. I personally have never had the experience of trying to alter somebody else's path or destiny intentionally, because that's simply not something I would ever do. It's not in my nature, but even if I was inclined that way, I would be very much aware of the tremendous amount of bad karma that I would accrue by doing that, by imposing myself on someone else's free will or destiny without their explicit and fully consciously informed consent. But there are plenty of people in this world who are not as concerned about such things as I am, and esoterically, there is a tremendous amount of occult history that discusses these topics in a lot more detail than I can get into here. One has to be incredibly naive and ill-informed, if not in denial, to reject the idea that darkly oriented beings exist here on the earth plane, and that in the same way that those of us who want to effect positive change attempt to do so, there are those who would desire to affect negative outcomes as well. This is extremely well documented in human history, and it is still occurring today. So we can't be naive. There is a spectrum here from light to dark, with extremes at both ends. That is not to say we should live in fear, but we should not live in ignorance either. Like I said, for the purpose of this episode, I think I've demonstrated that it is not difficult at all, and that it is fairly common for us to have our energy shifted or influenced by other people or our environment, and that in fact, this is happening constantly. So I hope that makes sense. If anyone ever says other people can't affect your energy, I would respond with, you have no idea what you're talking about. For more detail, check the episode description for other episodes or articles that are related or that I mentioned. And if you're interested in a reading with me, I'll put a link to that as well. I have a 15% off special on currently. Many sincere thanks to everyone who supports me, especially my YouTube members and astrology clients. Thank you very much. Take care, all the best, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye for now.